Be Faithful podcast, where we learn and relearn to walk with God through life's most difficult moments. I am your host, Maria McCarg, and today I have some really great guests with me, my friends Brian and Kristina Campbell.
Come on.
And I'm so grateful for their friendship and partnership. And Brian and Kristina have led in ministry for a long time in Denver, Colorado, and recently moved to Boston. Yeah. And they have a sweet, cute little daughter, Aspen.
Sure do.
And I'm just so grateful for your guys' partnership in the gospel and just even you being here today. So welcome to the podcast.
Thanks you for having us. We're very excited.
Yeah, awesome. So today's episode is entitled Treasure and Tragedy. And Brian and Kristina are going to tell us more about what that's all about in just a little bit. But just as we kick off and get started, I wanted just to ask Brian and Kristina, ask you guys, that life hasn't always been easy. They could look at you guys and think, you know what, God has used you in great ways. You're so well loved and just continue to do awesome things for God. But, some people might not realize how hard it's been. Yeah. And so I wanted just to start off, I know, Kristina, you've had some health challenges and continue to today, till this day. But just wanted to start off by asking just to, tell us about the discovery of that. I know. Yeah, go for it.
Awesome. Well, I've kind of always had some level of health challenge in my life. I haven't always been a very healthy person. And as I got out of college, I found that what used to be kind of headaches became chronic migraines. And that was kind of the main thing that I struggled with for years. Was just, you never know when it was going to hit. You didn't know what food would trigger it or a smell. And it's kind of hard to predict. But then a couple years into our marriage, things just started getting weird. I started getting more infections, more issues, cysts. I got shingles, which as a young person is not a normal thing.
And also for old people.
Yes, it really shingles is a horrible.
Yeah.
And they told me you're young, it'll heal in a couple weeks, and it took 2.5 months. And so we were feeling something's wrong with my body, but we couldn't put our fingers on it. I was seeing different doctors and nothing really was coming up. And so we thought, we'll just keep kind of going about life and see what happens. But I started having some allergic reactions to medications. So if I got a UTI or something, I'd have kind of some level of an allergic reaction to a medication to it. And so it's something we were always aware of, but didn't really have reasons for it and didn't really have huge reasons to be concerned if we were going to travel or something. But we ended up going on the mission team for the second time to Thailand. And we took a group of 10 college students with us. And we went out a little bit early to celebrate our anniversary. Because we're going to be, in Thailand, it feels like. Let's do that first. And celebrate a little bit and then go serve God on the mission team, which we love Thailand. And the church there is incredible. But that's where kind of things really hit rock bottom with my health.
Yeah, so we're celebrating our 5th anniversary. We're down in southern Thailand. And it's like paradise, what you think of. But it's also the rainy season. And so we were celebrating an anniversary, and Kristina started to come down with an infection. And we were like, all right, it's at the point that we have to go to the hospital and try to get some antibiotics to help clear up this infection. And we went, and the hospital was great. Awesome. It wasn't built there the last time we were there, and it was this time. And we told her that all her health issues, what she couldn't have, what she could have. And they gave us an antibiotic that was quite a popular antibiotic that she had in the States before. And she took it, and we went back to our hotel, and it just started monsooning. And everything started flooding outside. Things started shutting down. The roads turned into rivers, and there's water coming into our hotel room. And I'm just sitting at her desk at our hotel, and I'm just there reading and watching the rain. And Kristina's in bed, and she tries to say my name. She's like, Brian. And I'm like, Kristina, what's up? And I turn and I see that her face is beet red, and her eyes are starting to swell, and her lips are swelling, her throat is swelling, her ears are swelling, her body is swelling. And I rushed over to you, and I just didn't know what to do. We didn't know what was causing it. We didn't know how much time we had. And so
my throat was closing up. I couldn't speak. It was crazy.
Such a scary moment. And I call the hospital, and I'm like, you just gave us this medicine. We just saw you this morning. This is what's happening. And they said, well, we can't help you. We can't send an ambulance to where you are because of the water, and you can't come to us because of the rainy situation. What you need to try to do is find antihistamines and maybe something else that can slow down the swelling and call us back. And so I hang up and I look through our bag. I'm like, I know that we have Benadryl. And remember at the hotel we were staying at, they had a nurse's station. So I called the front desk and I said, hey, is the nurse still here? And they're like, no, she went home because of the rain. And I'm like, well, do you have any medicine? And so this guy, this guy with a Thai accent, broken English, is reading prescriptions off.
Oh, man.
And I remember he said prednisone. And I'm like, I know prednisone is a steroid. I'm like, run that to me as quick as you can. So this little Thai guy's running through this flooded water, knocks on our door. And meanwhile, Kristinas choking for each breath. I get the prednisone. I get this antihistamine. I just start pushing it into her mouth and down her throat and giving her water, trying to help her swallow these pills. And I call the hospital back. I said, this is what I just gave her. This is how much I gave her. What do I do next? They're like, well, you need to do that every 2 hours and see if she makes it through the night. I'm like, through the night? Like,
if she makes it till tomorrow, you can come in.
And I was just so hopeless and scared. And we did that. And the grace of God, she made it through the night. We went back to the hospital, and it took months for the swelling just to fully go away. Yeah. And it led us on this journey for the next year to try to figure out answers. Like, why is Kristina's body responding so poorly to medicines, to health issues? And the migraines got more chronic. Inflammation grew, the daily pain, fatigue, it all just compounded and got worse.
Yeah. It was crazy. I remember, like, I do a lot of study on mental health and, like, how to manage your mind. And as Brian is trying to figure out all these things of, like, getting the medications and stuff, I'm, like, starting to panic. Like, I remember looking at the, like, ceiling of the room and think, this is the last thing I'm going to see. And it's not the beautiful beach of Thailand. It's, like, it's raining outside and I'm going to see the ceiling. And Brian was like, I need you to get your head together. He was like, you have trained for this and I need you to buy me some time. And I don't know if it was like the frustration of the moment or like the courage of like, yes, okay, I can get my head together. And so I figured out like, okay, I got to slow my breathing. I got to let him do his thing because he's the one who could make all the calls. Yeah. And it's wild. Like my husband physically saved my life, like kept me on medicine all night long, got me to the hospital. It was like such a crazy thing. And then I feel like he's saved my life over and over again since then of just the challenge of the years after of my body just not coming back. Like I just couldn't figure out how to get the pain to go down, figure out what was causing all these reactions. And so we spent a lot of money out of pocket over the next year, just all kinds of different doctors. And all the doctors were like, something's wrong, but we can't figure out what it is. And so nothing would come back like clearly on tests or anything. And so finally we were literally at the point where we were like, maybe we should just give up. Like let's just like go back to living. However, I ate only 7 foods for a year because I was on this like elimination diet to like try to help my body react better, and it was awful. But he helped me there too because he cares about food and actually cooked good food of my 7 foods. Come on. Which was helpful.
There's so much you can do with 7.
Oh yes. That's awesome. But the whole thing was just kind of wild. And in that time, like, so our 5-year anniversary trip was supposed to be like our last big hurrah before having kids. Yeah. And then we were trying to figure out, like, you know, some doctors were like, you could get pregnant and it could totally cure your body, or you could get pregnant and it could kill you and the baby. And I just felt like, how do you make a faithful decision in that? Like, how do we figure out how to faithfully move forward in any of this without kind of any direction from doctors? And eventually we found, through our friends Rob and Chelsea Novak in New York, New Jersey area, they introduced us to Mark Sanders, who's an elder in our sister church in New York. And he like specializes in the weird, like the things you can't figure out. He's somebody who can help you. And we came to him just so desperate. Yeah. And I feel like God answered so many prayers through his help, through, I mean, being an elder, like the counsel and encouragement he gave us in addition to like the health help. And so, it was kind of wild. We found out I had like severe chronic Lyme disease. Wow. And then a handful of like parasites and other infections and yeast overgrowth in my system. And so I went on like really serious treatment for a handful of years. That is one of those like make you sicker before you get better, because you've got to like kill everything off in your system. But I feel like it, even in the bad, it helped me have like some faith of like, okay, I'm doing something and we're moving forward in the right direction. But it's definitely been a journey, and all that while we're in the ministry and trying to help save souls.
Right.
God was
help
moving.
other people.
Yes.
It was crazy. It was some of our most fruitful times of ministry was in this time when we were just so weak and desperate for God and for help. Yes. God blessed it the most in that season. It was crazy how God moved. But
just your reliance on God more than yourself.
Right. That's all we had.
But thank you for sharing that. Thank you. I mean, even hearing Brian's side as well of like, wow, like God really used you in saving Kristina's life.
Yes.
And that's incredible. Dr. Brian.
I know, right?
Come through in a pinch. Now,
he's one in emergency.
That's pretty... Yeah, that's wild. But it's amazing just seeing you guys even now, like smiling and laughing as you're sharing this like just terrific moment and really scary moment. But it wasn't just a moment. It lasted for years, not having answers and just the frustration that can come and not having answers. And I don't know, I can relate to even doctors like thinking it's you, not them.
Right.
And nothing against doctors. I'm grateful. But it's frustrating when you know your body and you're not getting the answer, not getting answers. But I'm just curious, just some of that you've mentioned a little bit, just how God, even you saw God blessing you through the storms. But just what are some lessons you've learned, and you can just share with us, like some things you've learned that got you through, that you're still smiling and continues to get you through like life's difficult moments.
Totally. You want to start?
No, go ahead.
I think this journey of health stuff, it really prepared us for kind of like any hard stuff that comes ahead. And I think about like how things in particular, I just feel like they're really lonely. Like even though we had each other, at times it just felt like nobody knows like what goes on at home, and you're never sure like how honest should I be with people about how sick I really am, but then I want to be able to go out and still help and serve. And I just felt like there were so many days that I woke up and I was like, the only thing I have is God. Like that's like the only way I'm going to get through today. And I mean, I had Brian like physically to be there with me and help me, but there was just so many times that I was like, I just don't have the strength or energy for today. And I remember it became a habit to like wake up first thing in the morning and just pray through anything that was going to happen in my day. And like, God, give me the energy for this. Give me the strength for this. Give me the clarity of mind to like have this conversation. And I just became reliant on prayer in like a totally different way than I ever expected. And I think Brian had some of the same pieces of being really reliant on prayer and God in that. But I feel like sometimes it looked different for us because I was like, to get out of bed, like I have to pray. And he was like, to face this day and take care of my wife, I had to pray. But I found that, there were certain times that I prayed and I felt like it was just really easy to pray about all the hard. Like, this is hard and I feel horrible and how am I going to do this and how long will it last? And it was just heavy so often. And it is true. I feel like we've gotten to grow and we can smile through some of it, but I'm like, you can't count the tears that were shed in that process that are still hard looking back at those years or dealing with health challenges now. But I found that like, as I kept praying, if I started focusing on things I could be grateful for, that all of a sudden it felt lighter. It didn't actually change anything about my normal day. It didn't change whether I felt better physically, but my heart felt lighter. And there's always something to be grateful for. And, there were days that I was kind of desperate and I'm like, thank you for the bed that I'm laying on. That's real. And I still pray that. Yes, exactly. Me too. I'm like, I'm grateful for our bed. But there were some times that I was like, I'm not very creative today. Like, this is all I've got is what can I see in front of me? That's what I'm grateful for. I felt like I could always thank God for Brian because that was just such a gift. And he's helped me so much. But just some basic things, but it helped me to like train my mind to think more like, what can I be grateful for in the midst of this hard time? And those helped me. I know praying prayers of gratitude as I'm like doing dishes and my back is hurting, or like I'm getting ready to go to a meeting that I'm like, this is going to be really hard, but like, what can I be grateful for in this moment? And it just lifted my spirits in a different way that I think is a special thing that God gives us. That there's a reason Thanksgiving and gratitude come up so much is because I think it really changes our hearts in that. And so
choosing gratitude instead of grumbling. It saved our marriage to choose to be grateful. It saved our relationship with God to be thankful and be grateful. It made those who were in our lives endear to us, to want to help and to want to be on our team when you're grateful versus when you're grumbling or complaining. And there was plenty to grumble and complain about.
We surely felt like grumbling.
Who in their late 20s, early 30s had to carry their wife to the bathroom, or on their day off, Kristina needed to stay home a whole day, or these different things to rest, or each day we just didn't know what was coming. And so
hard to plan.
On the other hand, for me, praying and submitting to God's will was so important, because every day I prayed for this to be taken away. Yeah. And I still pray for her health to be restored and for her to feel better. But I stopped praying less about that and more about what could God do to help me part of her story and journey, and part of my journey of how I need to be as a husband, how I need to grow as a man, my relationship with God that needed to grow, trying to pull in a team that he gave us, kind of submitting to his will and being like, okay, if this is our journey for now, how can I be the best Brian, the best husband, the best minister, the best friend I can be in this season that brings a lot of glory to God, that shows my love for my wife, and that he can use us through this. And praying that type of prayer changed my character. It changed my heart. It changed the way I talked about our suffering. It changed the way I was able to empathize with people and connect with people. It changed the way I loved Kristina and saw her and her pain and suffering, and it changed me. And those prayer walks, I just go on a few mile prayer walk every morning, and just, she was praying prayers of gratitude. I was praying just to be conformed to his will and likeness through this. And the same aspect of gratitude brought us together in a cool team.
Yeah, totally.
And God blessed it.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. This is powerful. Powerful stuff. I am so inspired by your example of not giving up and persevering and just fighting to stay faithful. And it's powerful. And I know I'm like kind of speechless. I'm like, wow, that's really really inspiring. But just seeing how, even through the hard, finding something, and gratitude and prayers gotten you through, and even you saying like how gratitude it helped your heart, but even helping those that are helping you. I think even thinking that for myself, I'm like, it's so true.
People love grateful people.
They do,
and they want to help grateful people.
And I'm like, we need to
allow people to help us.
Totally.
And so just seeing how that connection, like how powerful gratitude is, and it's talked about a lot, like in society as a way to help, but even through the Bible, I'm like, it's all over, especially in the New Testament. So speaking of that, I know that there's been some scriptures that are ones that have been like your nuggets, or I like to call it like anchors.
Love it.
And so I wanted to know what they are. I wanted you to share them with us.
Something that Kristina, she suddenly lost her dad just over a year ago. And that was a whole other sadness and tragedy and suffering,
painfully faithful through.
And what we've really decided together and individually is that we're going to look for God's treasure in the midst of tragedy. That there's always, God is working good in our lives and around our lives, even if the outcome is not what we want it to be, or if we can't even see the good. Like, God is still at work. And Kristina's really focused on this scripture. We know it in terms of money, but in Matthew 6:21 it says, "For where your treasure is, your heart will be also." And Jesus is talking about treasure with your money, but we've learned that treasure with our gratitude, our perspective towards God, what we're investing in, will bring our heart there, and that's where our heart will be.
Yeah. I think, learning so much about gratitude through my health challenges, I became so grateful for our marriage and what God had given us in our marriage, and there was so much to be grateful for there, and I felt like, wow, this is protecting my heart. Like it felt like my heart could get really hard through just the never-ending questions and what felt like never-ending pain. And I was like, man, gratitude is really changing this. And if I can put my treasure in like this piece of gratitude that I can be thankful for, my heart will stay there. It'll stay soft. It'll stay close to God. And I feel like that's proven true through all these other things that have been painful and that we need to be faithful through. And we finally got the green light in health challenges to start trying for kids, and got pregnant right away, which was just so exciting. And then a couple days later, I started having a miscarriage. And I remember just like I just had no idea what to do. I was like, we've been through so much health-wise. There was like years of prayer, other people's prayers, like excitement about a baby, and then to lose a baby so quickly. And I just felt like I don't want my heart to get hard. Like I've got to figure out how to stay faithful. I've got to figure out how to stay close to God. And so it became, okay, where am I going to put my treasure? And I just made this list of good things God was doing, even through the miscarriage, which was like such a weird thing to be like hurting, but also like searching for gratitude. And I feel like it prepared me for losing my dad, that like literally sitting like at his bedside as he was passing is when this idea of treasure and tragedy came up. And so I just made a list, like in my phone, treasures in the tragedy, and it was all the things I could be grateful for sure, for my dad. He was an amazing man, an amazing disciple, but even just the process of like everything God was doing and taking care of in that time, I just felt like I can keep my heart soft and like close to God if I put my treasure here, versus just putting my treasure in having my dad on earth, or putting my treasure in having good health or having a baby, which now we have a beautiful, healthy baby, which is great. Yeah. But I just have learned that like, where your treasure is, that's where your heart will be. And if it's in things being easy and simple or just getting better, then we're often going to feel, disappointed. But if we can put our treasure in who God is and how he helps us, then it keeps us in a much healthier place in our hearts and our minds.
And then doing the basics really well helped us so much. Like, and what I mean by basics, like your walk with God and being vulnerable with people and having people in your life. Totally. That's gotten us through every twist and turn. And I think one of the things I've had to focus on as being a husband is how can I provide a peace and a calmness in the midst of the storm. Because I'm not physically going through the pain, but it's affecting our life and our decisions and everything, and how I carried myself from my walk with God and the friends in my life helping me determine the type of husband I could be and the peace I could offer Kristina and the support I could really be to her. And Philippians 4, we know this passage. It says, Philippians 4:4, rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. And that whole idea of just rejoicing always and choosing to do that together guided our marriage. Being gentle. I mean, we both needed a lot of compassion and gentleness with one another. It was hard on her. It was hard on me. But being gracious with each other and assuming the best and going the extra step to communicate made such a difference. And just going to God with our anxieties, our fears, our worries, our doubts. I mean, so many doubts can flood your mind when you're suffering and going through challenges. But prayers and petitions to the God who can help us and rescue us and guide us through the storm. And it truly gave us a peace that transcends understanding. That peace came at a high price. I mean, it was really giving our anxieties, our fears, and trusting God through each twist and turn that happened. And that peace, I mean, is more valuable than gold to us. That no other source could have given us but God himself. Just so grateful for that. But where we decide to place our treasure, even in the midst of tragedy, it has determined how we've handled these storms.
I think in all the hardship, prayer and petition came easy, right? I was like, there's plenty to like petition God for and like help me get better. But I love that this verse in Philippians talks about with thanksgiving, that like it constantly reminded me that I have much to be grateful for outside of even my own individual pain and suffering. And it's special that like God can, set up this guard around you that gives you peace and protects you in those times. And I felt it, like not just with the health stuff, but with anything that's come since then. I've just felt like, wow, God, He's real. He's right in this, that if actually we do this, if we like try to rejoice, if we try to be gentle, if we try to come to him with all these things and we try to be grateful in the process, that he'll protect us and take care of us through it all.
Yeah, and that Greek word for guard your heart, it literally is a military term that described a group of soldiers guarding a fortress or an outpost, surrounding it to protect it. And that's what God does to our hearts when we really come to him. Come as a mess, come in distraught, come in straight, whatever. When we
tears
come to
or
him,
smiles, either one.
And really with prayers and petitions, he can guard our hearts. And I just love that imagery that God has soldiers, guarding my heart, guarding Kristina's heart. But it took putting our treasure in him to get there. Yeah,
totally.
Took a lot of work.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. I'm just taking it all in. I'm going to go back and listen to this a few times. And, but it's really powerful. I'm just grateful that you're here. Thank you for sharing your story. And I mean, it's hard, I'm sorry for all the pain and the loss, but, just your example of not giving up, of persevering, and just even you sharing, something that I was relating to as you were talking of, it's something that you don't want to go through tragedy and hardship alone.
Yeah.
There is an aspect that you do have to do alone. Nobody knows the true heart or the physical pain or the mental and the spiritual. And so letting people in, but also fighting that battle with God. Yeah. It's really is intentional. And, so I'm so thankful for your example of just, those nuggets of prayer and gratitude and how hard you worked at it. I love that. I'm going to remember treasures in tragedy. Yeah. Treasure in tragedy. It's just so powerful. That's something that you were really fighting and working through. And then more tragedy came along the way. Yeah. And how because it wasn't something that you waited until the harder things came, because it was something that you were already putting into practice, when you were in that more desperate moment, your thought was, let me get a list. Yeah. Yeah. And so God, that's the powerful me for that. Right. God prepared you through these other trials that seemed so huge at the time. Totally. But then when something even bigger came along the way, I'm just struck by that you're immediately let me get out my list. Let me go on my walk. And that's how God's promise of peace in a time that it would seem why are you at peace? That you were able to have it because of doing the work. Yeah. And really the power that came through gratitude and thanksgiving. So thank you so much for sharing and being vulnerable and letting us all in. And I know I'm going to put this into practice. I'm going to get out a list and start Treasure and Tragedy. So thank you for sharing. Thank you so much for listening.
Yes, thank you.
To our podcast today, episode 4. And please subscribe, share my YouTube page, Painfully Faithful. You could also find this on Spotify. You could find me on Instagram, Facebook, and I'm just so thankful for the opportunity to share just how to be painfully faithful, sharing the hard, but that we don't have to give up, that there's hope. And hopefully this will bring you some hope along the way and to your friends. And until next time, see ya. Bye.